Good afternoon. This is Steve Thornley, CEO of Carenational, and I'm happy to be with you today to introduce a special guest. We have a HEDIS expert by the name of Jane Jackson, and Jane is pretty renowned out in the healthcare quality community because she runs a website called dailydosehq.com, which is all about quality management in managed care and specifically has a lot of information about HEDIS. And we came across her website not too long ago and we're able to connect with her, and we're happy to bring her on to HEDIS.tv. So without further ado, Jane Jackson, RN, welcome to the program.
Well, hello. I'm so glad to be here.
It's fantastic having you.
As far as years in healthcare, I'm coming up on my 25th anniversary. So
wow,
isn't that silver?
That is silver. Wow. So you've been around
from way back before electronic medical records, and were they doing stone tablets back at that time for medical records?
We had a chisel and I learned to read hieroglyphics and all that good stuff.
I've always wondered how professionals in the medical field, are able to read the doctor's writing and still make sense of it. So I'm sure you've had your issues with that along the way.
I don't think it's actually reading it. I think it's recognizing the symbols.
And thus hieroglyphics, right? Okay, perfect. Well, why don't we just talk real briefly about your background. Tell us how you got started into quality, and kind of tell us what you've been doing over the past 20 plus years and what brings you to where you're at today.
In a nutshell, I started out right after college in a hospital, migrated into critical care. I worked in the cardiothoracic intensive care unit for 13 years, and I ran across a friend of mine that I went to nursing school with, and he said, "I'm opening a home health agency. Come work for me." So I went to work at a home health agency. We had no patients, and I was the director of nursing. So we grew the agency up. Eventually, I moved on to other home health agencies, and one day someone told me about HEDIS, and they said they did HEDIS contracts on the side, and I went, "Really?" He said, "You get paid to sit home in your pajamas and review charts?" And they went, "Yeah." I said, "Well, wonderful, sign me up." So I started in 2008 doing HEDIS reviews, moonlighting, and every year since then I've done them. So this is my 10th anniversary doing HEDIS this upcoming season for HEDIS.
Wow.
For 2018. At one time I was looking for HEDIS contracts, and I saw a job listed online for a HEDIS educator, and so I applied for it and got it. And so now I'm a HEDIS educator in the Houston area.
What do you do in your role as a HEDIS educator? That sounds very interesting.
A manual, I read it, and then I go out to provider offices and try and educate them on the easiest way to capture the measures so they can get the star ratings, because their star ratings add up and become the health plan's star rating, and so everybody benefits, plus the patients benefit from having those tests. And a lot of times the provider just doesn't understand that all he needs to do is this one little sentence and it would take care of that HEDIS measure.
Okay, fantastic. Well, tell me, we talked a little bit or mentioned at the beginning of the program that you have a blog or a website called dailydosehq.com, and I've checked that out. There's some very interesting
articles in there referencing HEDIS, and I know you've put up a couple here in the last couple of days. What motivated you to start that and provide that kind of content?
As a HEDIS educator, I found there was very limited information other than NCQA, and sometimes I found it difficult to actually get an answer to a question or to bounce that question off other people. And so I thought, well, let me do some research. And I've always liked to write. I have several books that are just sitting on the shelf gathering dust. And so I wanted to share that information with other bloggers, and I've been fortunate enough to network with a few bloggers and ask them questions about HEDIS, but mostly it's to educate people about the field, because if you sit in a room of 100 nurses and you say, "I do HEDIS," 3 people in the room might raise their hand and go, "I know what that is."
Right.
It's a great field. It's up and coming, and just the past 10 years, they've added, 15 more HEDIS measures? So it's not getting any smaller. We need more people. So this is how I can let people know that HEDIS is out here, and we need good employees, qualified applicants.
Fantastic. You know, and I want to address something that just came to mind in reference to HEDIS scores. From a consumer standpoint, how do those scores kind of play out to the end user? Where can a consumer that's looking for a health plan, where can they find information about the HEDIS scores of a particular plan?
They can go to the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, the CMS website, and find that information. I'm sure that's not the only place, but they could put in, if they were interested in a particular health plan, without naming any, they could put that in and Google star rating, and that information would come up also. One of the advantages the health plan has is if they have a 5-star rating, they can sign people up all year long, whereas if the plan has a 4.5-star or less, they have to wait to the open enrollment period in October, November every year.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think I don't know if it was last spring or last summer, I had picked up a copy of Consumer Reports, and they had actually done a feature on health plans for every state, and obviously the HEDIS data was used to put their article together, which I found was very interesting. What do you find is the biggest challenge that you have when it comes to HEDIS, whether from a provider standpoint or employing other people to do the abstraction and the auditing? What do you think is the biggest challenge facing HEDIS right now?
It is possible to sit in a room with 4 different companies, including NCQA, and have each of us read the specifications on a measure and come up with a different interpretation of a particular sentence. So there is some slight difference, and so you always have to go back to NCQA and get their authority on it, because they are the ultimate.
They are the ultimate authority, yeah.
Right. Hardest thing I find is a lot of the providers want to have good star ratings. They want to help, but they just don't know things such as the functional status assessment. If they would just put patient capable of doing their own ADLs, that's all they have to write. And that takes care of that measure, and they just don't know that.
Now, do you manage a team of HEDIS professionals now, or are you just individually doing the education?
I am an individual employee of a managed care company, and I have a particular territory that I cover, and those are my providers.
Wonderful. One other question that I want to address before we wind up the interview is we've had a lot of questions come up about people taking abstraction positions and how they're actually compensated. What is your take on paying somebody per hour to do HEDIS chart abstraction versus being paid by the chart?
That's a good question. This past year I have always been paid hourly. This year I actually was switched over to getting paid by the chart. And so I ran an average of it, and it ended up being about the same. So even though it felt like I was only getting $3 or $4 per chart, I still earned the same amount of money. As far as the healthcare plans, I can see the advantage to them paying by the chart.
What would that advantage be?
The more charts a person does, the more they get paid. Whereas if you may only get 2 or 3 charts.
Do you find that there's a tendency, and I'm not trying to lead the witness here, but is there a tendency when you do it on a per chart basis for people to rush through the chart, and therefore it's prone to more mistakes?
Ooh, that's a tough one, because most of the IRR scores, your required accuracy score, is to be 95% accurate. So if you miss 1 or 2, it can knock your scores down really quickly. And most health plans vendors will put you in remediation if you drop below 95%. So there's an incentive to keep your quality up.
Okay, very.
Well, you have been a wealth of information today, and I want to wrap things up and make sure we'll make sure to get the title here for your website up on the screen. But again, it's dailydosehq.com, And there they can find not only articles about HEDIS. Tell us a couple things. What else do you have on your site there?
One of the things that interests me the most is to sit down and thumb through Tabers and look at all the strange diagnoses and syndromes. And I love going through the coding book and looking at all the strange codes. Do you know there's actually a diagnosis code or an encounter code for a cloudburst?
A cloudburst.
There's a ICD-10 code for a cloudburst.
And what does that mean?
I'm not even sure. Someone was caught outside in a cloudburst.
That's fantastic. We got to keep a humor in this because we get so busy during HEDIS season that sometimes we forget to stop and smell the roses, so to speak.
Right.
Well, Jane, thank you very much for coming on HEDIS TV. It's been a great honor to have you on, and I'm sure that there'll be some opportunities for us to talk again in the future. Thank you very much.
That'd be great. Thank you so much for having me.
You betcha. I'm Steve Thornley, CEO of Carenational Healthcare, and you've been watching Jane Jackson, who runs the site dailydosehq.com. I encourage you to go there and read up on all things HEDIS. And I'm certain that we'll have Jane back on in a future show. Until then, thank you for watching, and we'll hope you enjoy the rest of our program today. Thank you.